Huh, there's no one here yet. The gym, which had been designated as a convocation venue, was completely empty. I stood there with my daughter, CYNDY. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed through the gym. Violet, a classmate from high school. She was smirking as she looked at us. Attention, everyone. Single mother households are disqualified from enrollment. Violet clapped as she laughed. She looked absolutely delighted. Tears ran down my cheeks out of frustration. Oh my, crying already. How pathetic. Violet sneered. Besides, convocation already happened a few days ago. No way. But we received a notice saying it was rescheduled for today. We had definitely received an official notice about the date change. But now, she was saying it had already taken place as planned. Getting tricked like that, maybe it just means you had it coming. Even if it were true, didn't you find it suspicious? I couldn't argue back against Violet's words. And we left the gym. Mom, this happened because of me, right? If I hadn't said I wanted to go to that school. CYNDY looked down as she spoke. That's not true, I said, but she wouldn't stop blaming herself. I couldn't let it end like this. CYNDY, Mom is fine. Leave it to me, don't worry. I'll make sure the principal gets fired to make up for this. I smiled at CYNDY. I had to do something to honor her hard work. As her mother, I vowed to protect her. My name is Roseanne. I'm 37 years old and a single mother. My ex-husband was my high school classmate. We started dating after graduation and got married impulsively. At first, things seemed to be going well. When I was 22, my daughter CYNDY was born, and I was happy. But soon that happiness started to fade. Despite his kindness, my ex-husband was a serial cheater. I tried to keep the marriage together, but in the end, I couldn't. When CYNDY was 2, I got a divorce. Since then, I've raised her alone. In the beginning, I was full of anxiety, supporting myself and facing everything alone with CYNDY. Every day felt like a whirlwind, filled with one new challenge after another. Whenever I saw CYNDY growing, at her graduation ceremonies, at convocation, I felt an overwhelming sense of joy. I told myself things were working out, even if it was tough. Despite all the struggles, I turned my passion for cooking into a career. Now I run my own restaurant. I wanted to create a space where parents, especially those struggling like I had, could feel comfortable bringing their children. So I paid close attention to every detail. Flat seating, a kids' menu, anything to make the place welcoming. Among my youngest customers, the hamburgers and fries became a huge hit. Word of mouth spread, and soon the restaurant was thriving. Because of that, I started hosting job experience events for kindergarten kids, inviting them during off-peak hours. It became so popular that many preschools and kindergartens started reaching out to us. I consider myself lucky. Except for my ex-husband, I've been blessed with amazing people in my life. Most of all, my daughter, CYNDY. She grew up to be such a kind and thoughtful child. Even when she was little, she hardly ever threw tantrums. She must have been trying to be considerate of me, even at such a young age. She would always say, "I want to help Mom," and carry dishes, fold laundry, anything she could manage. On my birthday, she gave me a drawing of my face and a letter that said, in big letters, "Mom, I love you." I remember bursting into tears from sheer happiness. No matter what happens in the future, I will protect her. I swore to myself I always would. There were tough times, but now CYNDY is starting college in April. Mom, I have one favor to ask. One summer, before her entrance exams, CYNDY came to me with a serious expression. I have a dream of becoming a lawyer. That's why I want to go to a top school. She spoke with conviction. The tuition is expensive, and I know it will be a burden, but I really want to try. Mom, please. Her voice was firm, but I could see the hesitation in her eyes. As I listened, my heart swelled with emotion. She had grown so much. It made me both proud and a little lonely. But I had been preparing for this. I had been saving for her tuition all along. This isn't selfish at all. You don't have to worry about anything. I held back my tears and gave her a reassuring smile. From that moment on, CYNDY dedicated herself to her studies. But tuition wasn't the only problem. The school she wanted to attend was highly competitive. With just an average academic record, getting in wouldn't be easy. At that point in the summer, her grades weren't promising, and honestly, I was worried. But as she chased her dream, her determination exceeded all expectations, and she improved dramatically. There wasn't much I could do except make her late-night snacks, but her hard work paid off, and she passed the exam. I was so overjoyed on the day of the results that I decided to offer half-price meals at the restaurant that night. I told every customer who walked in about my happiness. Roseanne, this is way too much of a discount. Nicola, one of my regular customers, laughed as she teased me. It's fine, nothing makes me happier than this. CYNDY worked so hard. As I spoke, tears streamed down my face. Watching her take her first step toward her dream filled me with pride. I wanted to celebrate her achievement with everything I had. Congratulations. You both did an amazing job. CYNDY and Roseanne. Nicola's words made CYNDY burst into tears as well. The restaurant, filled with laughter and happy tears, felt like a banquet hall. It became one of the best memories of our lives. A few days later, the school held an orientation session. There, I ran into someone unexpected. It was Violet, my former classmate. Apparently, she worked as a school administrator. Long time no see, Roseanne. Have you been doing well? To be honest, I never liked Violet. She was never a friend, just a classmate. We never had a deep connection. My ex-husband had been in the same class as Violet in high school. She had always tried to compete with me, whether it was test scores, sports rankings, or even the accessories we owned. Whenever she won, she would smirk and say, "Guess I win again," in the most condescending way. Those moments left a bitter taste in my mouth, memories I could never forget. In reality, her victories were often trivial or questionable. She even manipulated certain teachers into changing her test answers to correct ones. I never truly lost to her in anything, but sometimes, just to end the exhausting cycle, I would let her believe she had won. Those were memories I'd rather not revisit. So your daughter is enrolling here. It's a private school. Isn't that tough? Does your husband make good money? Violet never bothered to sugarcoat her words. Actually, I divorced a long time ago. Tuition is expensive, but I can manage with my salary. As soon as I said that, Violet's lips curled into a chilling smile. She looked genuinely delighted to hear that I was a single mother. She hadn't changed at all. If anything, her smirk now had a few more wrinkles than it did in high school. Oh, a single mother. That must be rough. Are you in debt or something? No need to put on a brave face. With the innocence of a child, Violet, the 37-year-old, spoke. It was frustrating, but she was now part of the school staff that would be interacting with CYNDY. Thank you for your concern, but I'm doing just fine. I appreciate your support for my daughter from here on. I tried to keep things civil and bowed slightly. "Oh my, you seem so confident. How boring." For some reason, that irritated her. She glared at me as if I had personally offended her. Even Cyndy, standing beside me, seemed uneasy about Violet's attitude. The school we had longed for so much felt completely different from what we had imagined. It was no surprise that the contrast was shocking. Even as the orientation began, I could see Violet moving around near the stage. She wandered back and forth in the gym, making her presence known. I had no intention of paying attention to her, but my eyes kept drifting in her direction. Our eyes met. She flashed that same unsettling grin before leaning in to whisper something to a man beside her. Looking closely, I realized that the man was the principal. He had just finished giving a speech to the incoming students. A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. What was she saying to him? Violet's lack of decency was enough to put me on edge. I stayed cautious, but nothing happened after that, and the orientation ended without issue. "That woman you knew, Mom. She gave me really bad feeling. It's like she doesn't care about how other people feel at all." Cyndy said this on the way home in the car. She sounded unusually upset. "If she ever says anything to you, promise you'll tell me, okay?" At that moment, I was once again reminded of Cindy's strong sense of justice. Maybe she really was suited to becoming a lawyer, someone who defends the weak. That thought crossed my mind. "Thank you, Cyndy, but don't worry, Mom's fine." The very next day, something strange happened. I received a direct message on my social media account from an unfamiliar sender. When I saw the name, I was shocked. It was from Violet. Messages came in rapid succession. "Are you really okay being a single mother? You must have a low income. You shouldn't push yourself so hard. By the way, why did you get divorced? Come on, tell me. I'm curious. You must have gotten stuck with a worthless man. Sorry for you." 5 messages in a row, all brimming with Violet's usual personality. She claimed to pity me, but her excitement was obvious. Even during the busiest hours at my restaurant, she continued sending messages without any regard for my time. I was getting exhausted, but knowing Violet, if I handled this the wrong way, she could easily turn her attention toward Cyndy. As much as I wanted to block her immediately, I couldn't take that risk. Cyndy was about to start attending that school. The last thing I wanted was to cause any trouble. I never imagined things would escalate like this before school had even started. Carefully, I crafted neutral responses, making sure not to provoke Violet. A few days later, I received a letter stating that the convocation date had been changed. I found it a little strange, but since it was a private school, I figured these things happened. I accepted it without much thought. Once school started, I would have more chances to run into Violet. The thought alone filled me with dread. It felt like I had been thrown back into high school. But watching Cyndy so excited about her new journey, I knew I couldn't let Violet ruin this. As a mother, my job was to support Cyndy. Finally, the day of convocation arrived. Cyndy stood in front of the mirror, checking her outfit with a bright smile. Seeing her like that, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride in how much she had grown. I was already getting emotional. Good thing I hadn't put on makeup yet. Tears welled up in my eyes. "Mom, are you seriously crying already? It's too soon." Cyndy laughed. Memories flooded my mind. Her childhood, the day she was born, all the nights she stayed up studying for exams. Each one warmed my heart, and I couldn't stop the tears. Tears are memories melting into reality. The more memories you have, the harder they are to hold back. Mom, thank you for letting me go to the school I wanted. She looked a little embarrassed as she expressed her gratitude. I felt like all the struggles I had endured were finally paying off. Raising a child is tough. Looking back, I wondered how I had managed to get through it all. But the gifts that children give in return are immeasurable. Moments like this, completely unexpected, yet so profound. A happiness that felt like it validated my entire life, wrapped around me. Thank you, too, CYNDY, for being born. By the time I spoke, my voice cracked, and I couldn't say another word. I never imagined I'd be crying my heart out this early in the morning. You're so quick to cry, CYNDY said, laughing at me over and over. I knew I was a sentimental parent, and so, filled with the greatest happiness, we headed to convocation. At that moment, I had no idea I was about to experience the greatest despair of my life. There's no one here yet. The gym, which was supposed to be the convocation venue, was completely empty. Not only was no one there, but even the chairs for the new students hadn't been set up. Despite it being just 30 minutes before the event, something was wrong. Come to think of it, there hadn't been any convocation announcement at the school gate or inside the building. A terrible feeling crept over me. Could it be? Just then, Violet's light-hearted voice echoed through the gym. I looked toward the stage. Standing there were Violet and the principal. Violet smirked as she locked eyes with me. Attention, everyone. I have an announcement. Single mother households are disqualified from enrollment. Violet clapped her hands together, her face brimming with genuine delight. It was the same smug expression she had always worn in high school. I felt my blood rush to my head. I was overcome with an uncontrollable sense of outrage. What do you mean? What's wrong with being from a single mother household? My voice trembled with fury as I forced out the words. Please refrain from raising your voice. It's quite unrefined, the principal said, wearing the same vile smirk as Violet. What were these two even talking about? CYNDY had worked so hard for this. And now, because she came from a single mother household, her enrollment was revoked. It was absurd. Who wouldn't raise their voice after hearing something so unfair? I snapped, my anger boiling over. This is exactly why single mother households are so disgraceful. No sense of their place. How shameless! Violet sneered, her eyes burning with condescension. I couldn't bring myself to look at Cindy's face. I didn't even want to imagine how devastated she must have been. My chest tightened painfully. Given your behavior so far, we've determined that your family is simply not a good fit for our institution, the principal declared without the slightest hesitation. No, CYNDY is a wonderful child. She's someone to be proud of, someone who deserves to be here. You can't just decide otherwise with words like that. Tears streamed down my face, completely different from the ones I had shed this morning. Oh my, are you crying? How pathetic. Violet mocked me with a laugh. At this point, my anger had already gone beyond rage. I was overwhelmed with sadness. It was so painful that I could barely stand. But I couldn't afford to lose, for Cindy's sake. I'll say it again. You are not suited for this institution. Accepting you would degrade the reputation we have built. This is my decision, as principal. The principal declared our fate in a calm, detached manner. Oh, and convocation already happened a few days ago, Violet added in a sing-song voice, making sure to get under my skin. No, but we received a notice saying it was rescheduled to today. We had definitely received an official notice about the change. And now they were saying convocation had gone ahead as planned. A notice? Principal, do you know anything about this? Violet turned to the principal, her voice dripping with fake innocence. It was a sickening sight. No, I haven't heard anything about a schedule change. Convocation was held as planned, the principal replied. But I swear, we got the notice. I tried to argue, but Violet cut me off. Maybe it was just someone messing with you. The moment I saw the expression on Violet's face, I knew. It was exactly like high school, when she changed test results just to compete with me. This was all her doing. Getting pranked like that. Maybe it just means you had it coming. Even if it were true, didn't you find it suspicious? I was speechless. Violet had a point. I should have been more cautious, knowing her personality. She had no problem pulling these kinds of stunts. She would shamelessly use methods that normal people wouldn't even consider. I had been fed up with her tricks for years, and yet I had fallen for it again. Oh, and I already took care of the enrollment paperwork. I'm quick with these things. Since you didn't show up to convocation, well, there's nothing to be done. Violet smirked triumphantly. Even if you were truly tricked, the fact that you believed it only raises concerns about your character. You are clearly unfit for our institution. Please leave here. The principal gestured toward the exit of the gymnasium. Character, dignity. Their shameless words stabbed deep into my heart. I clenched my teeth in frustration. Wasn't there anything I could do? Any way to turn this situation around? As I desperately searched for an answer, I suddenly felt a tug on my sleeve. It was CYNDY. Mom, it's enough. I don't want to be here anymore. Let's just go home. Her eyes were filled with tears. Seeing her like that, I immediately wrapped my arms around her. Why are they saying such awful things about you, Mom? I can't believe it. I don't want to watch this anymore. Cindy's voice was strained as she forced out the words. Cindy's hard work was supposed to be rewarded today, yet she ended up deeply hurt instead. A wave of overwhelming regret crashed over me. I had failed to support her. I had failed to protect her. I had never felt so powerless in my life. Holding back my tears, I wrapped my arms around Cindy's shoulders and walked out of the gym. Well, it's probably too late now, but I hope you manage to find another decent school. Violet's voice rang out behind us, followed by the principal's laughter. The car ride home felt like a funeral procession. Both of us struggled to hold back our tears. Mom, this happened because of me, didn't it? If I hadn't said I wanted to go to that school. CYNDY spoke while staring down at her lap. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm really sorry. That's not true, I said, but she wouldn't stop blaming herself. I couldn't let things end like this. CYNDY, Mom is fine. Leave it to me, don't worry. I'll make sure the principal gets fired to make up for this. I smiled at her. It was the strongest front I could put up. I had no solution, but I wanted to do something for CYNDY. I couldn't let the happiness we had felt this morning disappear completely. CYNDY seemed like she wanted to say something, but when she saw my expression, she looked a little relieved. Now where should I start? As soon as we got home, I decided to close the restaurant for the day. Then I reached out to Cindy's closest friends and asked them to invite her out. Just go out and have fun today. Don't think about anything. I handed her a generous amount of spending money, but her face remained clouded with sadness. But when her friends arrived, CYNDY seemed to feel a little better. I was relieved that it was still spring break. After seeing CYNDY off, I decided to take this matter to the Board of Education. I went to the City Hall and explained the situation at the front desk. They called in the appropriate officer to speak with me. At first, the official seemed skeptical, but as I spoke with sincerity, his expression began to change. I laid out all the evidence I had, Cindy's acceptance letter, the rescheduling notice, everything. As he looked over the documents, he grew visibly outraged. "They'll conduct an investigation on my end as well," he assured me of his support. When I got home, exhaustion finally caught up with me, and I collapsed onto the sofa. Why was the principal, someone in a position of authority, so easily controlled by a mere administrator like Violet? It was clear that something was going on between them. I began to suspect the nature of their relationship and decided to investigate, but I had no special resources or professional means to dig deeper. So I turned to the Mom Friends group chat I had formed through my restaurant and decided to ask around. It felt invasive to pry into someone's personal life, but when I thought about what had happened to CYNDY, I couldn't bring myself to care. At first, the responses were hesitant, but soon, messages started pouring in. Apparently, Violet and the principal were having an affair, and neither of them had a good reputation. "Will do anything to help. I can't believe they made CYNDY cry. Here's Violet's social media account. Maybe there's something in there that could be used as evidence." The Mom Friends stood by my side, offering various pieces of information. When I checked the account they had provided, I found Violet posting about her daily life. Mixed in, however, were subtle hints suggesting a relationship with the principal. I quickly took screenshots and saved the data. This could be useful evidence, but it still wasn't solid enough to be definitive proof. I have to do everything I can. I never wanted to hear CYNDY say those heartbreaking words again. I strengthened my resolve. That evening, I waited for CYNDY to return home. We ate dinner together, speaking little, but I tried to maintain an air of normalcy. The next day, in between the busy hours at my restaurant, I visited a law firm that one of my mom friends had recommended. The lawyer's response was hesitant at first, since this case revolved around matters of perception and personal judgment. Proving legal wrongdoing would be difficult. However, if we gathered enough evidence, we had a strong chance of winning a civil lawsuit. The lawyer believed in our case and agreed to continue providing counsel. It wouldn't be cheap, and it would take time, but I had no choice. From there, I went straight to a private investigator's office to gather further evidence. Another recommendation from my mom friends. Some of them had used this agency for investigating their husbands' affairs, and they swore by its reliability. The cost would be high, but I had no hesitation. I had to find a way to break through this situation. 2 weeks passed. I had been looking into other schools for CYNDY to transfer to. A few options surfaced, but none seemed like the right fit. There were no schools of the same caliber in our immediate area. If we were willing to relocate, there were choices, but was it worth uprooting everything for Cindy's dream of becoming a lawyer? Would she have to move far away, or would she have to give up on her goal entirely? Neither option was easy to accept. At first, CYNDY seemed surprisingly cheerful. She even smiled now and then, but I could tell she was just putting on a brave face. How could she not? Social media was flooded with pictures of her classmates enjoying their convocation ceremony. Each time she saw them, I caught a glimpse of pain in her expression. It happened over and over again, until finally, CYNDY started locking herself in her room. I wanted to cheer her up, but she wouldn't come out. Seeing my once lively CYNDY in this state only deepened my hatred for Violet and the principal. I would never forgive them. That anger became my driving force. The days flew by in a blur. Meetings with the Board of Education, discussions with the lawyer, reports from the investigator, all while managing the daily operations of my restaurant. The evidence was slowly but surely piling up, but my physical limits were approaching. I had been sacrificing sleep to juggle everything. "Roseanne, are you okay? You don't look well at all." Nicola, one of my regulars, finally voiced her concern. "You look exhausted, and the bags under your eyes are terrible. Is something wrong?" Nicola was a preschool teacher who participated in the events at my restaurant. She and her husband had been loyal customers for a long time. She was a kind and respectable person. I hesitated, but in the end, I decided to tell her everything. To be honest, I was willing to cling to anything that might help us. Nicola listened calmly at first, but as my story progressed, her expression darkened. It wasn't the kind of story anyone would enjoy hearing, and I began to worry that I had made a mistake in sharing it. But Nicola's reaction surprised me. "Unforgivable. I'll take care of this right now." She slammed her hand on the table, her voice loud and filled with determination. The fierceness in her tone was completely unlike the Nicola I knew, and I couldn't hide my surprise. "Take care of it? What do you mean?" I started to ask, but Nicola raised a hand to silence me as she pulled out her phone. "Hello? Come to Roseanne's restaurant immediately." "What? You're in a meeting." "I don't care. Roseanne and CYNDY are in serious trouble. Get here right now." She rattled off her words in one breath before abruptly ending the call. I was stunned. Nicola turned back to me with a smile. "I never mentioned it before, but my husband is the board chairman of the school CYNDY was accepted into." For a moment, my mind went blank. "What?" It was all I could manage to say. "We were thrilled when we found out CYNDY was enrolling, but we didn't want to put any unnecessary pressure on you, so we kept quiet." All the exhaustion I'd been carrying seemed to lift in an instant. Energy and determination surged back into me. "Even so, I can't stand it. To think they hurt you and CYNDY like this. Don't worry, Roseanne. Leave it to us." Nicola's words were incredibly reassuring. Soon after, I received a call from the private investigator. They had obtained decisive evidence of Violet's and the principal's relationship. It was finally our turn to fight back. A few days later, Violet and the principal were summoned to the gymnasium by the board chairman. I watched the two of them from the shadows. CYNDY and Nicola were with me. The two of them looked confused as they entered the empty gym. Having been told it was a staff meeting, the board chairman appeared on stage. "Mr. Chairman, what is the purpose of this meeting?" the principal asked nervously, glancing toward Violet. Violet also seemed bewildered, her expression a mix of confusion and unease. "Principal, surely you have some idea why the two of you were called here." The chairman's stern tone carried through the gym. Hearing that, Violet and the principal exchanged uneasy glances. "What are you talking about?" Violet answered awkwardly. The principal was visibly shaken as well. They were both desperately trying to cover it up. "We already know everything. As educators, your actions are utterly disgraceful and inexcusable." The chairman's voice was heavy with disappointment as he addressed them. He gave Nicola a small nod, signaling her to bring us forward. As CYNDY and I stepped onto the stage, Violet and the principal's faces contorted with shock. "Roseanne, why are you here?" Violet exclaimed, her eyes wide with panic. "Mr. Chairman, I don't know what you've heard, but we haven't done anything wrong." "That's right. Everything they're saying is just lies." The two of them scrambled to defend themselves, their voices overlapping in desperation. "It's not a lie. I have proof." I silenced Violet and the principal with a sharp retort and laid out all the evidence I had gathered. the notice about the rescheduled convocation, copies of the messages Violet had sent me, screenshots of her social media posts. I explained each piece of evidence, one by one. And finally, the most damning proof, a photograph of Violet and the principal leaving a hotel together. This is unbelievable. This is a crime. You invaded my privacy. Violet's face turned bright red as she shouted in fury. In contrast, the principal was speechless. Violet, be quiet. You have no right to claim privacy violations. Not after what you two have done. The board chairman's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. Have some shame. His words were spoken with quiet, simmering anger. It was clear that there was no room left for excuses. This is all Roseanne's fault. Violet turned her furious glare on me. Why had she done all of this? She finally admitted it. She had resented me since high school. Violet had always felt like I was ahead of her. That sense of inferiority had lingered, boiling beneath the surface. When she found out I was a single mother, she had felt an overwhelming sense of superiority. Drunk on that feeling, she had started looking into my life on social media. When I heard you became a single mother, I finally thought I had won. But then I found out you owned your own business and were actually successful. She glared at me with pure hatred. I can't stand that you're doing better than me. It's unbearable. A single mother, acting all happy and successful. There's no way you got there, honestly. You must have cheated your way to the top. That was the breaking point. How dare you? Cindy's voice rang through the gym. I had never seen her this angry before. Do you even realize how much my mom sacrificed to raise me? How hard she worked to build her business? I saw it all, up close. Violet visibly flinched at her outburst. So what if she's a single mother? I've always been happy. And you can't stand her success. That's ridiculous. Don't drag my mom into your pathetic obsession with winning. CYNDY spoke passionately, almost shouting. Seeing her so determined to defend me brought tears to my eyes. Once again, I found myself crying. I never knew CYNDY felt this way about me. So what? Violet's tone dropped noticeably as she looked down. It seemed she had nothing to say after being confronted with the truth by a 15-year-old. I was deeply proud of Cindy's strong sense of justice. Mr. Chairman, it's not what it looks like. Violet came on to me. It was just a moment of weakness. Please, forgive me. Now the principal started defending himself. He was desperately trying to protect his position. His panic was obvious. But nothing changed the reality of what he had done. A so-called moment of weakness didn't justify his actions. Hey, what are you talking about? You said you'd go on overnight dates with me. I only did this because of you. I didn't want any of this. It's all your fault. How dare you try to save yourself by throwing me under the bus? Shut up. Just stay quiet. In not losing everything over an affair. The principal and Violet started shouting accusations at each other, their voices growing louder and angrier. It was the very definition of disgraceful. I didn't want CYNDY to see this ugly display. Enough. The board chairman's commanding voice cut through the chaos, silencing them both. He sighed deeply, clearly disgusted by their behavior. Principal, Violet. From here on, I will handle this matter personally. Be prepared for a thorough investigation, and understand there will be consequences for your actions. With those words, the board chairman sentenced them, and Violet and the principal collapsed into their seats, drained of all energy. Roseanne, CYNDY, I sincerely apologize for everything that has happened. The board chairman turned to us and bowed his head. He continued, saying, I know this may feel too late, but if you're still willing, we would be honored to have CYNDY enroll at our school. Both CYNDY and I happily accepted his offer. I thought everything was finally resolved, but the trouble wasn't over just yet. About a month later, a health inspector unexpectedly arrived at my restaurant. It wasn't a routine checkup. It was a surprise inspection. I was a little taken aback, but I had always been meticulous about hygiene, so I knew there was nothing to worry about. As expected, the results confirmed there were no issues. Before leaving, the inspector mentioned that the visit had been prompted by an anonymous tip. Rumors started spreading online, claiming my restaurant had serious sanitation issues. Negative reviews flooded social media and review sites, all attacking my business. They claimed the food was terrible, the place was filthy, and the service was the worst. Accusations that had no basis in reality. Of course, not every customer experience is perfect, but I was confident that my restaurant had never done anything to deserve such harsh criticism. There was a clear sense of malice behind these attacks. This has to be. My eyes landed on one comment. This place is run by a disgraceful single mother. Violet's face immediately came to mind, but I had no direct proof. I contacted my lawyer right away. We'll send a formal notice immediately. A formal notice, or cease and desist letter, would force the platform to cooperate in identifying the culprit and taking legal action. It would cost a fair amount, but I decided to move forward with it. The results came quickly. As I had suspected, the culprit was Violet. I had my lawyer send the formal notice, but there was no response from Violet's side. I considered reaching out to her directly through social media, but my lawyer advised against it. That would only escalate things further. At this point, let's file a lawsuit. You're guaranteed to win. Since we had come this far, I decided to see it through to the end. I hoped this would finally bring closure. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. It was just before closing time. I was chatting with Nicole after she finished her meal when the restaurant door suddenly swung open with force. "Welcome." Before I could finish my sentence, I saw who had barged in. It was Violet. Her face was twisted with rage. "You need to stop this right now. I don't care about lawsuits or whatever, but you've ruined my life. Are you enjoying this?" She shrieked hysterically and lunged at me. Fear froze me in place. But before Violet could reach me, she suddenly spun through the air and crashed to the ground. "You know I actually take self-defense classes." Nicola's smiling face was a little terrifying. It was an unexpected side of her. Pinned to the ground, Violet was completely immobilized. I immediately called the police. Violet was taken away in handcuffs. This incident would work in my favor in the lawsuit. My claims were fully acknowledged in court, and Violet was ordered to pay a significant amount in damages. Following an investigation by the board chairman and the education committee, both Violet and the principal were dismissed from their positions. I finally felt that it was all over. I gathered the evidence from the case, along with a note that read Violet defeated, principal fired, and placed them inside a tin can, which I buried in my backyard like a time capsule. I dug a deep hole to ensure it would never be unearthed again, carefully covering it with soil. It was a symbolic ceremony, a tribute to the battle we had fought and won. That day, after experiencing utter despair, I had made a promise to CYNDY. They'll get the principal fired and bury him. At the time, I had no idea how I was going to do it, but now I had finally delivered on that promise. The story quickly made the news, and word spread fast. Violet and the principal's misconduct was exposed for all to see. The principal not only lost his job, but also his family. His wife, furious over his affair, sued both him and Violet for damages. Violet, now unemployed, was burdened with two massive lawsuits. She struggled to find work, as the scandal had spread all over town. She had no one to blame but herself. The school also made headlines, but the board chairman handled the situation well by publicly disclosing the findings of the investigation and the disciplinary actions taken. CYNDY was initially hesitant, still shaken by everything that had happened. But since the incident had been widely reported in the news, her homeroom teacher and classmates went out of their way to support her. I was incredibly grateful for their kindness. Thanks to them, she quickly adjusted to her new school and started enjoying her classes. She was working hard every day toward her dream, and seeing her so determined made me proud. There was something else that made me even happier. Thanks to the board chairman's thoughtful decision, a second convocation ceremony was held, including CYNDY. The other students and parents were incredibly supportive. No one objected. In fact, some parents even joked, getting to experience convocation twice is a bonus. As for me, once again, I ended up crying. My restaurant was also featured in the news due to the incident. However, thanks to my loyal customers, who spoke highly of the place in interviews, the publicity didn't harm us. If anything, even more customers started coming in than before. It was an unexpected but welcome surprise. My bond with Nicola and her husband deepened through this experience. Now even students training to become preschool teachers participate in our community events. We never had children of our own, so we can't help but think of you as our daughter and CYNDY as our granddaughter, Nicola said with a warm smile. You've really worked hard. You did an amazing job. You're a wonderful mom. You fought with everything you had for Cindy, Nicola said as she acknowledged all the struggles I had faced. I felt truly happy. I really am lucky, not just because of Nicola, but because of my wonderful customers, the children who attend our events, and most of all, my precious CYNDY. I am truly surrounded by amazing people. I want to cherish their smiles and continue running my restaurant, savoring every little moment of happiness that life brings. And above all, I will never forget to be grateful.